Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about how on the healing path or the journey towards growth, there can be too much of a good thing when it comes to validation. Now, for many of us coming from backgrounds of trauma or neglect, there simply wasn't enough for us to even form a healthy identity. This is the way that it works. This is the way that our sense of self develops when we're young, is that our emotional experience is met in the containment of our parents' emotional window of tolerance, their emotional capacity, and is given the message, you make sense. I understand that you are having an experience and your experience is okay. Once we've experienced that from the other, from the outside, we internalize that. And that's a really simple potted version of talking about how we maybe have a version of a healthy sense of self and good emotional regulation. So we are not frightened by our own emotions to the point where we shut them down, or we haven't had them shut down to the point where they're bursting to come out. And they come out really, really intensely. Okay, these are often the strategies that we'll see with people when there hasn't been that warm, resonant, you make sense message coming through around their emotional experiences. And so that early validation was missing. And often when we get into therapy or coaching, this is an essential part of the process. Having somebody acknowledge that our experience makes sense, our feelings make sense, the way we are makes sense is incredibly validating. If you've been told all your life or as a child, just there's no need for that, or why are you experiencing that, or stop doing that, or as you mature into adulthood and maybe you're having struggles if you've come from a background like that, why have you got such low self-esteem, or why are you so reactive about those things? Okay, when there isn't that understanding of, oh, I am this way because certain things happened that disrupted my development and certain things didn't happen that would have helped my development. So we get into therapy or we get into coaching and we start to see this and we start to understand this and we get that felt experience. Okay, so if you're working with a good coach or therapist, they know how to do that. They know how to validate their own emotional reality, to regulate their own nervous system. And then there's that anchor for you. Then there's that experience of, this is what it feels like to be held in the resonance of another being that tells me I'm okay, that tells me I make sense, and I can give that to myself. This is a really important step in the process, and in traditional therapeutic language, this can often happen in something we call the corrective emotional experience. So if we come with a problem or some kind of distress or some kind of experience that we're having, and in the past, we would have often had it met with stonewalling, that's I just don't get you and I'm not going to react to you, or intense reactions, or misunderstanding, or being told to be quiet about it, or whatever the different types of patterns. And again, I just want to put that little caveat in here that when I'm talking about the experiences we may have had with our parents, I'm not parent bashing, okay? For many reasons, people don't have these skills, and we live in a culture that has leached our natural capacity for connection out of us. So not a culture of blame here. Okay, just a culture of understanding. That's what I'm working towards. And that if we can learn these skills through our coaching relationships, therapeutic relationships, or through our own education with online experts, there's a thing called bibliotherapy in therapy, which is, maybe you can't afford a therapist, and so you read lots of books and you watch lots of videos like this and you connect with people and you're able to do your healing work that way. So I've distracted myself a little bit on that caveat and roundabout direction. The corrective emotional experience. So it's essential because up until that point, regardless of the external experiences of our life, so I see clients that are having a wide range of experiences on the outside in terms of their capacity to function in their life. Some have become highly successful in terms of societal expectations with work and family, etc. Some not so much. And that is not really the measure of what we're looking at here, right? What we're looking at here is someone who feels good on the inside, is able to take authentic action on the outside that also feels good to them, not to the internal voices of criticism and expectation and shoulds that are inside their head, or their expectations from their parents or their schooling system or culture, but their own true, calm, centered beings and hearts. What can happen with validation is it can almost become, because we lacked so much of it, right? Hearing that story, excuse me, for the first time, that you make sense, the way you are is fine, you're perfectly okay, is extremely important. And it still remains true. It still remains true. The value of a human being, the essence of a human being is never in question. However, some people can get stuck here and go down a rabbit hole for years of being attached to telling the story of what happened to me that makes me make sense in the way that I am right now, which may include quite a bit of suffering, quite a bit of emotional dysregulation, right? And that, as I said, super important to go, oh my God, I'm like this because certain things happened to me. But if we simply stay here and we keep seeking validation and we keep telling our story and we keep telling a new person or another thing, I did this, but it makes sense because that happens to me, we go down the rabbit hole of validation is what I'm talking about, and we don't actually move forward. So it's an essential step on the path to healing, but it's not somewhere that we want to stay. We want to take that information and go, okay, so I make sense. It makes sense that I have these patterns. It makes sense that I've had these behaviors. It makes sense that I've had trouble with self-esteem or feeling connected to myself or really backing myself. But if we become attached to that as our identity and having people validate, yes, it really makes sense, and it's no wonder you are the way you are, full stop, we are really limiting ourselves from fully moving forward to where I believe we ultimately want to go, which is having that validation inside our own beings for ourselves while we are expressing who we are and moving forward in creating lives for ourselves that are actually rich, meaningful, and fulfilling. And if we are attached to the story, like I don't love this language, but because we need that validation, we need that recognition. Shit happened to you. You were a victim of a certain experience or a lack of nurturing or whatever happened. That story needs to be told. That needs to be acknowledged and validated and held and witnessed. And then a new story can unfold. Because if that story isn't whole, it blocks us. I just can't move forward because this really needs witnessing. But we don't want to just simply stay there witnessing that and not moving into the new story of our life unfolding. Taking that information to tell us, well, this is what happened to me and it made me this way. What do I need now in order to have a different kind of future that feels really good to me and really authentic to me? If you're doing coaching or you're doing therapy or you're doing bibliotherapy, YouTube therapy, and you're beginning to understand that you've been through some really crappy experiences that haven't been optimal in supporting you to feel okay and navigate life with some sort of rudder, some sense of balance amongst the waves and the ups and the downs and the all over the place, then I encourage you to take that in, to feel what it feels like to be validated, and to simply hold that feeling inside yourself and begin to create a new story for yourself, for your future, which doesn't involve constantly retelling the story of your past identity and your past experiences. This will be extremely helpful for you in ultimately moving into a fulfilling, a purposeful, meaningful life of contribution to those around you, your community, and to yourself. I hope that this is helpful, and I'm wishing you so much warmth and so much resonance in your journey of growth and healing.